and I am so excited to be hosting tonight's reading with Myriam Gurba and Wendy C Ortiz. I'd also like to thank my coworker, Nicole Wallace, our event tech, Maddie D'Angelo, and our event moderator, Corey Hutchinson, for working tonight's event and for helping create and hold this Zoom room. So tonight I will introduce Myriam, who will then read, and then I'll introduce Wendy, who will then read. But before we begin the evening's program, I have a few reminders to share. Corey's adding a link to the chat now with some helpful Zoom tips and best practices. Please note that we are recording tonight's event. You're welcome to have your camera on or off as you prefer, but if your camera is engaged, it's possible your Zoom square will end up in the archived recording. Tonight's event is being live captioned by Otter AI, the transcript of which you may access by clicking the red live link in the top left of your screen and selecting view stream. The transcript will subsequently open in a new browser window. If you have any questions or run into any difficulties, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone with staff or moderator after their name, and we'll be glad to get things sorted out. Corey is now adding to the chat the Poetry Project's Safer Spaces statement. Whether the room we share and make is virtual or physical, proximal or remote, we remain steadfast in building with you all a community and environment that challenges and resists ongoing imbricated structures of hierarchy and harm. We invite you to join us in this work throughout tonight's event, and may we all carry it with us well beyond this evening. If this event were taking place in person, we would be gathered together as has been done for the past 54 years at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery. St. Mark's Church stands on the site of the family chapel of Peter Stuyvesant, built in 1660. In his time as Director General of New Netherland, Peter Stuyvesant began and supervised the direct chattel slave trade to New Amsterdam. He himself enslaved 40 Africans, the most of any person in the colony. These enslaved Africans' lives, the stolen lives and labor were used to construct the buildings and streets on this stolen land. St. Mark's Church is located on the unceded homeland of the Lenape people, Lenape-Hoking. I am speaking to you from what is called Bushwick, which is the unceded homeland of the Canarsie, a Munsee-speaking band of the Lenape people. Corey is now putting a map in the chat, not to endorse it as complete, but to invite us all to learn continually about the land we occupy, its history and ties. As we gather across various neighborhoods and states, it is important to remember that it's not just some of the land that was stolen or some of the land that needs to be returned, but all of it. It reminds me too that to return the land is not a matter of transferring capitalist ownership, but as many Indigenous thinkers have explained, a radical rethinking of belonging and ownership, centering Indigenous autonomy and active relationality and responsibility. Reading Myriam Gurba's book, Mean, took me a minute. In the middle of it, I told my friend as much, that I needed breaks, and they said to me that Myriam is not a writer who affords you breaks, which is right. They're both right. Not relentless, but unrelenting, Myriam's writing is a reminder that to be able to step away in whatever capacity is a gift, that many of us are in many different ways necessarily bound to the condition of living with it, whatever it is, and that living with it is a continuous present verb. Myriam reminds me that in the face of cis-white heteropatriarchy, many of us are critics simply by virtue of living, or have to be many different kinds of critics, or rather are positioned as such because we choose to say or show that this world is fucked up, I'm fucked up, you're fucked up, and she reminds me that saying this regularly and angrily is an act of care. Myriam is an historian. Her writing is history, is historical, is historicizing, and it's bratty, it's mean, and as a proud mean girl, I love this about her. Because she reminds me to constantly check the frame, to remind myself what it means to be cast as mean, that people who are not men, and especially those of color, are put to task for both being and not being constantly, totally available, usually both without consent. She's a badass who reminds me that being mean has definitional roots in being disobliging, and that's exactly right. Mean people are disobliging. Mean people are disobliged to relinquish autonomy over themselves, their personal and communal histories, over their historiographies. Sometimes they are called mean because they just don't want to talk about it. Then again, they're called mean because they talk about it too much. But the point here is one of maintaining discursive choice, that I will speak on what I need or want to speak on when I need or want to speak on it. A giant middle finger to hegemony, this book and her other writings are polemical and deeply felt. Her writing is an exercise in the disintegration of genre and tone, empirical proof of the elasticity of time, memory, thought, knowledge, wit, grief, love, hate, and critique, an object lesson in the messy dialectics of life. Things come up. Life gets in the way of life. Power gets in the way of life. We live in a nightmare where things happen and then go away but won't. Myriam Gurba lives in California. She's the author of a true crime memoir, Mean, a New York Times editor's choice. She collects bikinis, and I'm so grateful to welcome Myriam Gurba to the Poetry Project.
Thank you so much for that introduction. That was beautiful. And I'm really honored by the introduction. I'm really honored for by the opportunity to read at Poetry Project, and I'm really honored to be able to read with my dear friend Wendy Ortiz. And I always take it as a good omen when I see images of Eileen Warnoose. So I was thrilled to see Will's t-shirt, yes. So I'm going to be reading an essay that I published very recently. It's titled, "We Are the Ones Who Got Away." And before I read the essay, I'm going to say a prayer. And then when I'm finished reading the essay, I'm also going to say a prayer. And I think it's important to do this because of the subject matter of the essay. So I'll begin with that prayer. We're joined in prayer, praying that those experiencing domestic violence, a form of captivity, may survive their ordeals, make their way to freedom and thrive. We celebrate women who engage in self-defense, and we protect women who engage in violent self-defense. So the title of this essay is "We Are the Ones Who Got Away." And there is a content warning. There will be graphic descriptions of sexual assault and domestic violence. Unless you actively and assiduously avoid US news, then you're aware of a story that continues to generate a phenomenal amount of attention: the disappearance and recovery of Gabrielle Petito. This summer, Petito, a 22-year-old white woman, and Brian Laundrie, her 23-year-old white boyfriend, embarked on a cross-country trip in a converted transit van. On September 11th, Petito's family reported her missing. 8 days later, authorities recovered human remains believed to be hers from a Wyoming campground. Because men in the United States of America execute approximately 3 female romantic partners a day, it is widely and reasonably suspected that Laundrie is responsible for Petito's disappearance and death. Put more bluntly, I believe Laundrie committed femicide and, in an act of macabre control, hid what remained of his quote-unquote girlfriend. While it's logical to assume that he hid her remains to avoid charges of homicide, it's just as logical to assume that he hid them for the same reason many patriarchs isolate and sequester the women they abuse: possession. Many women have survived a man, if not several, who has threatened to kill and disappear them. Many of us consider ourselves fortunate to have survived a patriarch like Laundrie. We are the ones who got away. There are millions of us. Most of our stories are unknown, and those of us who muster the courage to report femicidal threats are often met with disdain, condescension, and minimization. Such responses are par for the course when it comes to reporting to law enforcement. I learned this in 2018 when I made the mistake of telling a policeman, a domestic violence detective, about domestic violence. An ex-boyfriend I'd escaped from had told me in detail how he might kill and disappear me. And after I shared this information with the detective, I received a lecture. Instead of concern for my safety and the safety of others, the policeman urged me to have compassion for masculine sexual fantasies. He assured me that my ex-boyfriend's imagination was nothing to fear. When I proceeded to tell the detective that my ex-boyfriend often enacted his violent imaginings on me, the policeman grew curious. He wanted to know what I was wearing when I had last been assaulted. He wanted to know if I had been nude. The policeman's line of questioning had nothing to do with law enforcement. It was rooted in prurience. I had a prior experience against which to contrast my conversation with the domestic violence detective. At age 19, a stranger sexually assaulted me. The detective and attorneys who questioned me about the stranger assault expressed horror when I narrated my experience. They asked nothing about my clothing. They asked nothing about my panties. They winced when I told them what the stranger had done to me. Now that I was narrating the violence enacted by a boyfriend, I was being shamed. Perhaps that happened because the policeman believed that choosing a romantic partner is synonymous with choosing a rapist. Perhaps he thinks rapist and boyfriend have the same definition. The domestic violence detective shamed me for having entered a bedroom with my ex-boyfriend, the place where a very violent assault took place. The policeman implied that I had consented to sex by existing near both a bed and a man. I recall thinking something along the lines of, this man is paid to investigate domestic violence associated with domestic settings, and yet he took the domestic location of my assault as evidence that I had consented to rape? What is more domestic than a bedroom? How many women have told this detective about being raped in their own home and then had it implied that they'd asked for it by daring to be at home? The Petito case invites us to rethink the way we language romantic harm. The term domestic violence is in many ways a misnomer. Many patriarchs disbelieve that unwarranted violence happens to women and girls in domestic spaces. Many of them believe that the girls and women with whom they share homes are more akin to furniture and appliances than human beings. The domestic violence detective communicated that that was how he regarded me. Upon crossing a bedroom's threshold, I was at best a human being of inferior status, one meant to provide sexual services. At worst, I became an object. Domesticity spoke on my behalf, consenting for me. It's a mouthful, but I prefer stating that what I experienced wasn't simply domestic violence, but violence in service of domestication. This domestication occurs through a system of relations, and these systems are practiced expansively. Ways of relating travel anywhere the patriarch goes. Where the patriarch goes, so goes domestic violence. The patriarch brings domestic violence to work. The patriarch brings domestic violence to school. The patriarch brings domestic violence to the hospital, to the grocery store, to the post office, and the road. The patriarch brings domestic violence on vacation. I thought about domestic violence going on vacation as I learned about the Petito case. I remembered trips I took with the patriarch, whom I'll refer to as F. The month before I escaped from F, we went on a road trip. F prohibited me from driving, and so I rode alongside him from California to Arizona. Upon arriving at our destination, I helped F carry our belongings to a guest suite. F seemed distracted and engrossed by an idea he didn't want to share with me. I fretted about what that idea might be. When I asked F what was on his mind, he smiled nervously. He answered, "Nothing, babe." In the kitchen, fear seized me as I watched F unpack. A brown paper bag held groceries and a knife. The suite came equipped with everything F needed to cook a meal, and I wondered if F had brought the knife to terrorize me. Weeks before our road trip, he'd slapped me across the face after I declined to dance with him one evening. After slapping me, he followed me to the kitchen, grabbed a knife and brandished it, aiming it at my neck and chest. Now, this red-handled weapon was on vacation with us. I began to think about the hikes F wanted to take me on. I considered the cliffs we'd be walking along. I didn't want to seem too distracted by my quiet safety planning. F might think I was trying to escape, and the last time that I had tried, I'd been met with sub-lethal violence. That first night in Arizona, F cooked dinner. I thanked him profusely for it. I washed the dishes, his red-handled knife included. The knife rested in the drying rack. I tried not to think about it. I also had to think about it. I had to monitor its whereabouts. F loved surprises. When we went hiking the next day, I texted my parents over and over. I sent them images of the landscape. The photographs were intentional. If I went missing, I wanted my family to have a sense of where to look for me. My texting annoyed F. He bitched about it. "Put your phone away, turn it off," he ordered. We hiked through some of the most beautiful country I've ever seen. I wondered if this land was to become my grave. That night, F and I dined out. When we returned to the suite, I changed into my pajamas. I went to the kitchen for a snack, and as I crossed the living room, I felt F's shoe in my lower back. A powerful kick caused me to fly stomach first. My head whipped back. F continued to kick me into the bedroom. He shoved me onto a bed and pulled down his pants. Uncomplicated rage contorted his face. He smacked me across the face and hit me in the head. He smacked me across the face and hit me in the head. He smacked me across the face and hit me in the head again. Dizzying, isn't it? Wanting to know what F was going to rape me with, I looked down. I stole a glance of his limp dick. F's face turned murderous. He made a fist and punched me with it. Punching me in the face repeatedly gave him an erection. He finished raping me. I visited emergency rooms many times when I was F's girlfriend. I didn't go after this assault. Instead, as per F's order, I watched TV with him. That was his pattern: violent assault followed by TV. There's no such thing as a vacation from domestic violence. The violence goes on vacation with you. And there are some vacations I wish I couldn't remember so clearly. In closing, I'm going to offer another prayer. We are joined in prayer for the souls of femicide victims, that they may find peace, that they may rest. May the living provide them with comfort. Thank you.
Thank you, Myriam. Immense gratitude from me, and I imagine from all of us, for sharing that with us. And I'll now introduce Wendy, who will close out the evening. Wendy C Ortiz is a note taker, a student and teacher of attention, a punk poet for whom I have deep admiration. Reading her last book, Bruja, is like the cool kid sharing their journal with you, or like reading Finnegan's Wake if Finnegan's Wake were interesting, or like reading Sappho's fragments translated by Blacklight. Though the entries are marked by what month in which they were written, I found it hard to think about time when reading this book. I lost track of the month even as I was reading the word, or perhaps more appropriately, I wasn't even reading the month. I was just observing it. It just was there. I didn't want to think about time. I don't think I could. Wendy destroyed time. And there's a science to her work too, a scrutiny. This is a scientific text. Wendy is a scientist. I mean, Bruja has an index of terms appended to it. The reader is invited, urged to consider the text as though they might a textbook, because this is a textbook. Because by collecting notes on her dreams and sharing them with us, Wendy has written a textbook on consciousness, on personhood, and the matrices through which they interact, refract, are developed, are broken down. Wendy's writing is a study of relationality, of life lived between family, friends, lovers, strangers, the self, and no one at all. Wendy revels in both creation and decreation. A dreamoir that reminds me that genre is over, that genre never existed. Bruja holds close and calls into question what constitutes both sleep and waking life, and demonstrates that the divide between them was never really there. And Wendy's work at large requires no explanation because it has none. Abandon your illusions of mystery, set yourself aside and observe. Wendy C Ortiz is the author of Excavation, a memoir, Hollywood Notebook, and the Dreamoir Bruja. Her work has been featured in the Los Angeles Times and the Los Angeles Review of Books. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Story Quarterly, Fence, and elsewhere. Wendy is a psychotherapist in private practice in Los Angeles, California, and it's a great joy to welcome Wendy C. Ortiz to the Poetry Project.
I need to unmute. Hello, thank you so much, Will. I truly feel honored by your intro, and I'm so happy that you invited me and Myriam to read together. I mean, to be able to read with one of my favorite writers, as well as somebody that I consider a very close friend, is super meaningful to me. So I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from what I hope is my next book, what will be in my next book. Let's see. I'm going to shorten this up just a tiny bit right now. Okay, so both of them are untitled right now. The heart is a muscle described everywhere as fist-shaped. The heart constantly serves as a metaphor we can't escape. The heart, of course, is related to blood, breath, and therefore oxygen. I can't get away from how elemental the heart is. It's not the spleen or the kidneys or the liver. It's the heart. That's the heart of this matter. Heart of glass, heart of gold, heart of stone. What if I took this fist-shaped thing and used it to punch through every characterization of the heart, I wonder? A ruby in the shape of a heart, combusting into gleaming red shards with the potential to draw blood, backed by a Blondie soundtrack. Mucho mistrust, love's gone behind. The Neil Young song Heart of Gold has always sounded like a dirge to me. The refrain, and I'm getting old, the line I most relate to now. Growing old, my heart transforms into something other than an organ I don't have to pay much attention to. Now it demands my attention, speeding like a fleet-footed jaguar, then grinding to a slower pace, loping before sprinting faster. All while I am motionless, the blood potentially pools, the risk to my life increases. I'm gonna harden my heart, I'm gonna swallow my tears, another rock song's lyrics go, and I believe I know something about this, maybe too much. It aligns with what I've learned. Deep into my 40s, I have swallowed death, betrayal, the sundry losses that those of us who live long enough will eventually meet. Over 20 years ago, I told a tattooer I couldn't let her tattoo me with a design I'd originally asked her to draw, an anatomical heart in the center of tidal waves reminiscent of the woodblock print, The Great Wave off Kanagawa by Katsushika Hokusai, because I was afraid it would signify that I would die by drowning. I ended up asking my tattooer to just give me the basic line drawing representation with a whirlpool at its center. She burned it into my skin, and I still sometimes wonder if I should have gone with the anatomical rendering. My own anatomical heart now, while not drowning, has developed a condition, a constant fluctuation, a rapidness so different from its formerly snake-like steady slowness. My heart, of the hearts I know, has suddenly become the diseased heart, the heart that won't listen to me, the heart that will only slow and beat rhythmically sometimes with the ingestion of small white pills that will lose potency over time, as they already have. I've said aloud to at least 2 people, what if I figure out how to finally write this book and then my heart goes back to normal? I no longer have this condition, I cure it. I have also said aloud to 1 or 2 people, what if I finally face this grief about my father dying and my heart condition disappears? What if? We say, I almost had a heart attack when we mean we were shocked. I have been a heartbreaker and I've been the recipient of heartbreak. I write you with this heart. I am suspicious when people describe things as heartfelt. I cross my heart and hope to die, but I don't really hope to die, at least not anymore. I come to you straight from the heart, my own, however erratic. Hand over heart, the right hand I use for nearly everything, but the action most important to me, writing. I live in the heart of the city, and though I heart this city, the city too, like my heart, is diseased. If I'm eating my heart out, I'm experiencing precious, abiding longing. If I tell you to eat your heart out, I'm boasting. I'm trying to smolder your heart into feelings of jealousy. My heart goes out to all the hardened hearts. I know where you're coming from. Heart has these words in it: here, earth, here, art, hearth if we double that H, threat if we double that T. In the last 2 years, I've occasionally viewed the actions of my heart as a threat, as something to avoid noticing, to avoid in general, until I no longer can't. My partner puts her ear to my heart, to my chest to be more precise, and says, yep, you're an AFib. If I wanted to surround myself with representations of the heart every day for the rest of my life, I could easily do so. Our culture provides them for me regularly. I started paying closer attention when I was diagnosed with this heart condition. And now, knowing this may follow me until the final days of my life, my attention has become even more steadfast and rapt. Words that often describe the heart, physical and metaphysical. If this atrial fibrillation, won't let me go, I in turn won't let the heart metaphors go. I want to perform a surgery and excise every meaning we've assigned to the heart and how its presence will never leave us. I will open up my heart, even if it kills me. Changes I've made since learning I have atrial fibrillation in no order whatsoever, possibly as arrhythmic as my 48-year-old heart. I have read, bought, and borrowed books about addressing my anger, some with titles I loathed, others that were quietly surprising, and some that were revelatory. Downloaded an app to help me meditate, which I'd been doing before my diagnosis, but now I do more often with intention, near daily meditation, to the sound of a voice that I wanted to dislike, but which I've grown used to, even fond of, the meditation teacher, a good balance between goofy and serious. Yoga, which I tried over the decades at various times, never finishing a series if I bought a pass, always leaving, always feeling like it wasn't what I needed because I thought I was relaxed enough already, then trying it again, then not liking the environments where the yoga was taught, then trying again when I had a small baby who went to class with me and rolled around the mat, then crawled away on the wood floor, making it hard to concentrate because corralling her sweet fat baby body took up my attention. And then this year, I finally tried it again and it stuck. And I credit the safety and security of doing it alone in the comfort of my house, no teacher touching me, just a teacher on a screen smiling and walking me through it from all the countless videos I have access to, videos I can do over and over, engage, notice the efforts my body makes, what comes more naturally, envisioning the next pose on a schedule of 4 to 6 days a week. And I love the word practice, have always loved it. And I respond to routine. And when the yoga teacher, just one, I only like her, tells me that a particular pose will open up my heart center, I have to wonder how often my heart center is closed and how heart center sounds like a place where people go to care for their hearts. Though in this culture, it could also be a place where people go to buy new hearts or renew old ones if they have the means. And I think my heart center must have a swinging door. It opens and closes unnaturally, though I'm told it opens when I do some of my favorite poses like Trident, which always makes me think of Neptune, or camel pose, where my heart is almost facing the ceiling while I'm on my knees trembling, cobra pose, where my heart is near the ground facing the floor, in which I'm often coached to float my heart down, my heart a little buoy in a choppy sea, floating, maintaining. Quitting alcohol, sort of, because I rarely drink anyway, have rarely drank much in the last few years. Beer and wine can sit in my house untouched for months. I give away gifted wine bottles all the time to friends. And this year, I can only recall having one fancy cocktail that featured gin on New Year's Day, ordered to go with a fancy meal in the dark winter of the pandemic. And then maybe I had 2 pony bottles in the spring. Are they called pony? Like pony kegs? Those little half bottles of beer. And I drank one while making dinner and instantly felt the buzz thoroughly. And then I felt a little sadness creep in, and it struck me that I generally avoid drinking in my house because I think it brings up some sort of maudlin despair in me that I don't need, can't take. So when I say I quit alcohol, there was barely anything to quit. And when my friend who I've drank the most with in my life, who could drink me under the table, the last time at a bowling alley in Brooklyn in the middle of the night, came to visit on my front porch during the week that we first understood the Delta variant was something to have fresh concern about, she brought a bottle of wine and I abstained so very easily. And I wondered, is this the first time I've ever been sober with this friend, like in my whole life knowing her? She being the one with whom I sat on the floor of the Long Beach Auditorium during a rave in the 90s, having eaten ecstasy together, having decided we would be in touch with each other every week for the rest of our lives, which we did until the pandemic or just before. For almost 30 years, we maintained that practice, that routine. So when I say I quit alcohol, daughter of alcoholics that I am, there truly was not much to quit. I quit weed, which is a very different matter, a much longer story, but the encapsulated version, the gummy versus the blunt, is that I'd fallen into daily use sometime. I don't even want to think back to when, but it solidified after my father died. And a seductive whisper started following me everywhere, telling me, you're allowed to do whatever you want. And another part of me said, okay, and I did. And things were quietly ruined since then. And my daily weed use, only after work, a cocktail hour thing in the backyard where I could hide, stole time and energy and the ability to focus or write, but I felt so good, so relaxed, I believed. Until I realized 7 years later that in order to make every effort to address my heart condition that was progressing, I had to try quitting altogether. And I set a date, deciding I did not want to be a daily weed user into my 48th year on this planet. So I quit the day after I turned 48, but I spent the day I turned 48 on my front porch with my dear friend, special friend, a 26-year-old who marched her beauty up to my house with a massive bouquet of red roses in her fist with a couple of joints poking out of their dark crimson blooms. And we sat on my porch and smoked one each and talked our faces off, cackling. And I told myself, one day you'll be able to do this again, but it will be like this, with a friend, with many open hours, talking, laughing, focused on each other. But that day won't come again for a while because you have to quit to see how your heart responds. So I quit. I made a relaxation playlist that I listen to when I shower, when I write, occasionally swapping it out for the ecstatic playlist I made for listening to when I write. I quit caffeine after taking months to go from 1 full-on large French press full calf to 3/4 decaf to 0, to ordering fucking decaf Americanos. And when someone I know said on Twitter that she wouldn't wish caffeine withdrawal on her worst enemy, I thought I would, haha. But I didn't tweet it because I know caffeine withdrawal is real and it can hurt. Because even going from 3/4 decaf to 100% decaf brought the headaches back, the irritability. And now taking careful sips of cold brew feels like living dangerously. And it makes me sad. But living without caffeine helps. I quit so much salt, having entered the territory of low sodium, another effort in changing my internal ecosystem. I have added magnesium because it's supposed to help heart rhythm. I have added temporarily an adrenal blend, a Chinese herbal preparation by an herbalist, supplements of CoQ10. I have added and deleted turmeric and ginger pills. I have deleted so much sugar. I exercise more regularly than I ever have in my entire life, riding 5 to 7 miles a day on a stationary bike most days of the week, strength training in my arms and the aforementioned yoga. I follow the moon phases. I do a tarot card reading for myself at least once a month. I return to therapy in the backyard of my therapist's house, underneath grapevines lolling on a pergola, amid the sounds of her water fountain, buzzing mosquitoes, and nearby lawnmowers. I engage more often with the grounding resources I came up with in our EMDR sessions. I use lavender body butter that's more expensive than any cream I've ever bought before. I refocused on the book I've been trying to write for the last 4 years. I've stopped taking the hike I did for over a decade. I have stopped going up that peak for the most part. And the few times I go now, I move more slowly than I ever have. And I go with a friend, Myriam, and we end at the forest instead of heading up to the peak I loved, where I used to face the sun and say words I learned from a witch, addressing the sun, telling it it is the source of all power, asking it to illuminate my heart so that I can do the sun's work, all the while feeling the actual rays of the sun hitting me as I looked over the entire city and sometimes all the way to the beaches west and south of me, all the while visualizing, as I was taught, the rays of the sun penetrating my heart and then streaming out of it on all sides. I focus on my breath more, realizing how most of my life I have resorted to shallow breathing. I unclench different parts of my body when I notice them clenching, mainly my jaw and my ass. I spend time hiking around the closest park and make notes on the animals I see, hummingbirds, lizards, dogs, butterflies. And I take notes on the animals on my neighborhood walks, cats, dogs, green parrots, crows, rabbits. I focus more on my own 2 cats, petting and talking to them, laughing at the thought that they have no fucking idea what cats mean to the internet. I take my dog for walks, avoiding the shit-stained sidewalks, and I look at the moon. I stopped making to-do lists. I stopped saying the names of people who've betrayed me. And in some cases, I corrupted their names by adding a lot of extra consonants when I say them that serve to make me laugh. When I have imagined conversations with people I don't know, but for the internet, I remind myself I don't know them by whispering phantom. And when I argue with people in my head that I don't know, but for the internet, I whisper again, phantom. I have stood in the shower and cried in the passenger seat of the car, laid in bed and cried, let myself cry whenever I typically try to hold back the crying. I have experimented with the dosage of the medications that are supposed to keep my heart rhythmic and not too fast. I have written the words rhythmic and arrhythmic over and over. And every time I write arrhythmic, it is so obvious what it feels like in my body, having that true extra 2 letters ahead of rhythmic. Rhythmic, a word that establishes a rhythm in its sound, while arrhythmic sounds imbalanced to my ear, the front of the word suddenly top heavy and awkward. I have visualized my heart in a ray of light. I have visualized the heartbeat of my heart and acted as though I could synchronize it to a perfect beat. I have envisioned my heart as a cartoon with a face, and it reminds me of the Kool-Aid man's face. I have exercised while visualizing my heart experiencing what we call conditioning. I have stopped talking to people who only take and take. I have sat in front of my phone or my computer and taken deep breaths. I have invited, usually before sleep, a dozen antlered deer, a supernatural black panther, an older woman who resembles me, the sun and the moon, both with faces, into my psyche to aid me in daily life. I have thought often of my father's heart. I've dusted my altar, arranged the photos, cleaned the glass, refilled it with water, burned incense, placed flowers, included instant decaf for my grandmother, a Slim Jim for my father, and cellophane wrapped sweets for my niece and nephew. I have lit candles that friends have given me. I have let myself think more and more about death. I have poured my love into a dog that is traumatized by the life she had before coming into our home. I live each day waiting to see, will it happen today? And how does every decision I make lead me to or away from my pounding heart? The worst are the days when I have done everything in consideration of my heart, all of which are things that also overlap with the care I would take of my metaphorical heart. The lengthy routine of bite, of strength work, of yoga, meditation, writing practice, but it will arrive anyway, sometimes with the warning of a few hours of slow, out of order thumping. Other times, just out of nowhere, I'm sitting and my heart takes off over beats a minute before it plunges, then rises, then plunges. Meanwhile, it forces me to keep making decisions out of consideration for it. My heart, physical, metaphorical, which of course is a good thing overall, but it also makes me miss what I haven't even wanted lately or haven't had in years. Things that used to be like, oh yeah, you have some? I'll have some, like cocaine. Really now every drug other than weed, because anything out of my ordinary now has the capacity to bring it on, while I live in the constant state of trying not to bring it on, to halt it, to head it off at the pass, to detour it, to kill it. But that's when I'm not trying to reason with it, like when my therapist and I had a talk with it, the AFib and my heart, but in separate rooms. So my heart could tell me what it wants, and then I could talk to the AFib separately after bringing it in from the waiting room and tell it, thank you for all you've done. Thank you for the messages you've given me to address other issues I wasn't taking care of, for the changes I've had to make since you've arrived. But now, couldn't you just hang out in the waiting room? Could you maybe just chill somewhere, not my body? Can we just let the changes I've made do their thing, their magic on this body now? It listens, it nods, it caresses its chin as it looks me in the eye. It reminds me it won't be the thing that kills me, though we both know it sure as hell can lead to the thing that will. We look each other in the eyes and all my worst 3 a.m. thoughts rush in. The ones I have to subdue with rhythmic counting, visions of lying on a still pool of water, the numbers going backwards. I pause and listen. My heart is quiet. It's doing the thing I remember, the thing it did before all of this started. It's silently, assuredly, quietly working. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing for this new work. And I suppose Miriam's was new as well. I'm so excited and I'm grateful to you both for sharing new work with us. I look forward to your next books, your next projects or whatever. Yeah, and so I want to open up the room and ask you all to unmute so that you can sing your praises, say your thank yous, say your hellos, say your goodbyes. Yeah, and then we'll do that for a minute or two and then we'll close.
Woo! Wow.